Good evening. Welcome to the PoliticIt podcast. Tonight we have Kera Birkeland with us. Nice to have you here. Thanks for coming. So let's talk about you a little bit.
What do you want to know?
Well, I want to know about these bills that you're kind of working on right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I've got a number of bills, and I'm happy to talk about any one of them you want to talk about specifically.
So I'd like to hear about the women's rights bill.
Yes, the women's bill of rights.
It's
a big one.
Yeah.
So first, let me frame it this way. This is not going to be like a cookie cutter of other states' legislation. That's great legislation for their state, but I think we've got to go a little bit further. We can't call it a women's bill of rights if we don't actually put into place things that protect and serve women in all capacity. I've ran athletic bills in the past for women, and this one will have a component of that. Right now in Utah, in athletics, you have girls basketball teams and soccer teams and track and everything else where the girls have one standard and the boys have a far greater standard. The girls don't get a locker room, for example, at their home basketball games in some schools. They don't get a locker room as track and field players, but the boys do. They don't get a locker room for their soccer team. Or there's just a variety of different things where the girls' equal opportunity is not equal to the boys. And again, I have 3 sons. I want them to have a great, successful athletic experience. But Title IX requires the state of Utah to ensure that we have equal opportunities. So a component of the Women's Bill of Rights will be setting up a part of that aspect in as far as, instead of if you have a Title IX complaint, in calling the federal government to say, hey, they're not following a federal law, we'll have something on the state level. So when coaches or players or parents are like, this is not right, this isn't fair and equal, they have someone here locally that can investigate and make sure that we are in compliance with not Title IX, but the parts of Title IX that make sense when it comes to equal opportunities. And we'll make sure that applies and make sure that there's fair and equality for all students. The bill will define what a man is and what a woman is. And I think the part that is going to be the hardest for some people to accept and embrace is it will create men's only spaces and women's only spaces. Right now, unfortunately, in the state of Utah, if you are a grown man and you just identify as a woman, you can walk into a shower at a local, rec facility, local swimming pool, the bathroom, whatever, and use it and be completely naked in there with all the women. We've seen that happen a number of times in different parts.
So that's actually happening here.
Yes, grown men with grown men anatomy are hanging out completely naked with a bunch of naked showering women. And the hard part is when law enforcement gets called, they're like, whoa, the rec center doesn't have a policy saying that's wrong. We don't want to get hit with a discrimination issue, right?
Right.
What do we do here? And so there's certain things that unfortunately need to be spelled out, because I'll be honest with you, John, I don't think there are transgender women out there walking in and inappropriately using women's restrooms and women's showers. I think you have bad actors who are using transgender women as an opportunity to violate the privacy of women. And that has to be dealt with. And does it mean that some transgender women aren't going to be able to use some spaces as freely and openly? Perhaps. But it's my hope that as a transgender woman, that they will value the privacy and rights of cisgender women, biological women, enough to say, you know what, it's fine. I want them to be safe too. So we're going to do this in a fair and reasonable way.
Wow. So anyone particular helping you with that, or?
So I have been talking with different groups. I've talked with the ACLU. I've talked with Equality Utah. I'm going to have further conversations with them. I have talked with parents groups. I have a roundtable that we're setting up, meeting later this month with a superintendent, a couple teachers, some community leaders, council members, so we can really understand, of course, parents and citizens, so we can really understand the implications of what we can do, what's actually happening, what we see coming. Because most importantly, 5 years ago, I don't think anyone really saw this coming. So we want to make sure we're kind of looking down the road. What could be the next place that these bad actors are going to try to come in and harm women and invade their privacy and their space.
So it's really these bad actors that you're going.
That's my biggest concern. of course, I think it's important, especially in this nation right now, to define what a man and a woman is. I mean, the fact that we have people in the White House, in the cabinet there, that can't do that or won't do that, to me is really unfortunate. And so as a state, why don't we just go ahead and take that on? So there's no misinformation. Every kid, every parent, everyone could say, that's a man, that's a woman, by definition. And we can just move forward with our lives knowing that that's already been handled and addressed. And then we can create those policies, but not just women's only. I want to be clear about that. It is men's only spaces too. It does not bother me at all. If they want to have a men's only club at a golf course or whatever, I don't care. I'm proud to be a woman. You be proud to be a man, right? Like, let's respect that there are different sexes. There's a man and a woman, and we don't have to share the same spaces. And frankly, I think we're seeing why we're best to not share the same spaces.
Very good. So do you expect a lot of opposition to that?
There's going to be elements that I think a lot of people will agree with. Perhaps, in the athletics. I've talked with people who are concerned, maybe a little bit more. They were very much opposed to HB 11 in 2022, the Save Women's Sports bill. And I think those that were opposed to that bill are seeing some of the common sense of this when it comes to youth facilities for girls, only spaces, in our prisons having women only cells. Like, they see that. Where it's going to get sticky, I really believe, is in the bathrooms and the showers. Because on one hand the comment is like, well, a transgender child doesn't want to go into the boys' bathroom because they live as a girl. So they should be able to go into the girls' bathroom. But in Utah, the reality is we've passed legislation that child can't really fully transition until they're much, much older.
Right.
And so now you're putting not only them in a position of, using a bathroom that doesn't really match their biological self, but you're putting all these other young ladies, these, middle school kids, and sometimes even elementary school kids, in a position of really being uncomfortable as well. So we've got to solve that problem.
So how do you solve that problem?
Well,
because that will be an issue, won't it?
That will be an issue. There's been talks, something we're considering is any new builds, any later retrofit builds, rebuilds, that kind of thing, having more single stalls, having more, single facilities. We got to be careful about that in certain complexes, because they also can become dangerous then if you just have a single, totally floor-to-ceiling walls and doors. There's elements of safety concerns, particularly for women in those cases. Other states have shown studies where, rapes and things like that can go on the rise. So it's a balancing act. But at the end of the day, you kind of just have to solve it. And pardon my French, but if you have a penis, you need to use the men's room.
Yeah.
And if you're not comfortable using the men's room because of changes that you're choosing to make in your body and with yourself, then let's have a facility for you to use that's single for you. Yeah,
that's like a family restroom or something, right?
Yeah, we can, and a shower.
And it's easy that would be a lot easier than, and the women will feel safe that way.
Yeah, I think that individual would feel safer, and we want that. I don't think there's any lawmaker out there that's like, we don't care about you. We want everyone to feel safe. And so let's provide that opportunity for them. They can choose to use the men's room or the women's room if that's, their sex at birth. And if they're going away from something that's their sex at birth, or they haven't had the full surgery and the full scope. Because in talking to, and I've surveyed a lot of women, if you have someone who is born male and has gone through everything and has been living the last 10 plus years as a woman, has had the full surgery, head to toe, and now they're using the women's room, odds are most of us aren't even going to know. And you're not really a threat to us.
Right.
What the threat is the men who are coming in posing as transgender. And we've just opened up this massive opportunity for them to use it and take advantage of women on the backs of the transgender community.
So you've already talked to Equality Utah.
I have.
And you're having meetings with, that's something that I think you did a good job with the sports bill. You spent a lot of time talking to a lot of different groups.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know at the end, the Senate kind of threw a curveball at you, but
it's okay.
But you worked through it.
Yeah, these are not easy issues, and unfortunately they are considered hot topics or hot button issues. I don't seek those out, but I do seek for solutions for the problems that people really are facing here in our state. And I've got a daughter in college, and some of her roommates are struggling with the fact that they're having to share a dorm with a transgender woman, and so they're very uncomfortable. This transgender roommate has a penis. I want to be in a room where they don't.
Yeah.
And I thought I chose that, right? And so these are just real issues that we have to come up with solutions for, because if we don't address them sooner or later, we're going to really regret it when somebody gets really, hurt, or violent, frankly, over it.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, and we'll come right back. Thank you.
Hey, gang. For all things Utah politics, make sure you tune in to PoliticIt, the greatest podcast around, with your host, Senator John Johnson. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.
Welcome back. We're here with Representative Birkeland. So during the break, we talked a little bit about your election bill.
Great.
Why don't you explain to people? I heard this on the radio, and I was kind of curious about it. That's when I called you to come on. So
it's pretty simple. Right now, we're sending out ballots to any registered Republican in our state, any active registered Republican in our state, and it's great.
Any registered voter.
Any registered vote. Well, in the primaries is really what I'm looking at. But yes, any registered voter. Yeah. A ballot's going out to any registered voter who's on the active list in our state.
Right.
Of those that are receiving the ballots, our return rate is we're getting 40-50% people voting. And that's not just, those aren't the ballots that people are then turning back in, because some of those people are showing up at the polling locations. So that means we're sending out 50% of those ballots are going to people who never even turn them in, who have no intention of voting in this election and don't want to participate. But we send them a ballot anyway. That's postage, that's paper, that's time expense. Why? Why are we doing it? My thought is, in my bill, we'd have a little paper in 2024's election that says, would you like to continue to vote this way? Check this box, submit it with your ballot, right? Whatever.
So that could be one of the questions on the ballot.
It could be something that's there for them, right? However we want to do it, there's so many different ways we could do it. It could be another thing that gets mailed to them. It could be, information that's on the elections website. Go here to make sure your address is correct, and to check that box that's how you want to keep getting your ballot sent to that address. There's so many ways to make sure that we're getting, first of all, good addresses for the people who want the ballots, and we're sending ballots to the people who actually want their ballots sent to them. I looked at our polling location on election day last time, and there was a long line, and there was a line all day of people who still showed up to vote. They got their ballot in the mail, and they either threw it away or whatever. They just were like,
or they said, I don't want to vote this way. Right?
They don't want to vote.
They feel strongly about it.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, it should be a national holiday. Election day should be a national holiday where we take our time to interview the candidates and figure out who they are and go and vote in person. That's how I want to do it. Great. Why are we sending them a ballot then? It's just a lot of extra, in my opinion, frivolous waste, time, money, and waste. I keep hearing there's only a 2% undeliverable rate, but there's other metrics that we should be going off of. How many ballots of 300,000 ballots that go out maybe in Weber County? Okay, that's just a number I made up. If only 100,000 ballots are coming back in, why did we mail out 200,000 ballots? If only 100,000 people wanted to vote that way.
Right.
I have no problem with vote by mail. A lot of people don't like it. They want to get rid of it completely. That was something that some constituents asked for. And I thought, you know what? If that's how some people want to vote, let's give them that choice and that option. But if you don't want to vote that way, John, and I've never voted that way, why am I going to get my ballot in the mail? Because I still show up at polling location.
So that's basically all this bill's going to do.
It gives people that option. I feel bad when I get my ballot. I'm like, I'm not going to vote that way. And I throw it away. And then when I go to the polling location, they're like, where's your ballot? I'm like, I threw it away. They have to print off a new ballot for me. And I'm like,
So they basically, and I know that because when you show up in person, they print off the same ballot they sent.
Right.
And it goes through the same exact process.
Yeah, exactly. And so
you even have to sign it, put it in the envelope, and
right, exactly. And so the reality is why can't we just give people that choice and that option? I'm never a fan of someone saying this is the best and only way we should do it, so we're going to continue that way. Let's have the conversation at least.
So really, this method of doing it still gives people the opportunity,
absolutely,
to vote by mail, but it saves a lot of money because those that didn't indicate they want to vote that way,
right,
will not receive a ballot the next year.
Exactly. They'll have to show up at the voting location.
Or they could go online. If they forgot to vote, they could always go online and...
Yeah, they can go online and check the box and get their ballot sent to them. But the thing is, the critics are like, oh, it's voter suppression. No. Were we suppressing voters 10 years ago before we had vote by mail? Of course we weren't. This is just making sure that people are getting their ballot the way that they want. And you can put so many different, theories behind it. New York does not have vote by mail. It's not because they're crazy conspiracy theorists, conservatives. It's just because there is a lot of extra expense to doing it this way. So let's make sure that we're spending that money.
This is really another method to clean up the voter list too,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Because if someone didn't send a ballot in
Yeah.
and check that, then one, they didn't want to vote that way next time, or two, they don't even live there anymore, right?
Correct. I can't tell you how many people have reached out and said, I have 3 properties, and every property every year gets 5 different people's ballots sent to it. You're like, well, I hope you took them back to the clerk's office, or threw them away and didn't
Yeah,
anything wrong
that
with them.
we do have to have people that take the initiative to clean that up.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, oh, well, I always get this ballot for this person, and you're thinking, well, always, why, if
Right.
you were that worried about it, you should have sent it back and said this person doesn't live here
Yeah.
anymore.
And the media, likes to say, oh, Representative Birkeland doesn't know that voting's a right. No, I get that voting is a right. And I'm really grateful for that right. But I stand behind the fact that voting is a privilege for every American. If you've talked to anyone who's fought overseas and been in those areas of the world where they don't have that right to vote, those veterans and those people in other countries will say what a privilege and a blessing it is that we have that right. And we have to take care of it, and we have to be proactive in how we participate in the process.
Yeah, sounds good. So you had another piece that you were talking about earlier. Why don't?
Oh, the lottery?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you're really getting controversial, aren't you?
I know. It's kind of funny because either people are upset because I'm too far right, or they're upset because I'm too far left or moderate. Like, I don't know, depending on who you talk to, who knows where I am on the spectrum, right? My bill would be to reinstate the lottery in the state of Utah. We're only one of 2 states in the nation that doesn't have a lottery. But all of the revenue from the lottery would be used to reduce and hopefully ultimately eliminate the state property tax.
Now there's a tax that
It's the most regressive tax I believe we have in our system.
well, and it's a tax you can't get away from,
Correct?
right? Because you work your whole life paying off your house, and then you have to rent it from the government the rest of your life.
100%.
Right?
I had a lot of constituents that came and asked me to work on property tax. And I had some bills, and I'm going to run some other.
Well, we did have a bill last
Yeah.
year on property tax, but the state portion of it's so small that it doesn't matter, right?
Well, it can matter though, right? It can matter depending on how we do with it. But the problem is we can try to reduce taxes, but we continue to grow. What we need to be doing is bringing in revenue. And
Right.
we are estimating, the state of Utah is estimating over $200 million of Utah money, Utah residents going out of the state and spending to buy lottery tickets. Imagine
Well,
they could do that in our state.
Yeah.
That $200 million could double $400 million. And it's voluntary. You don't want to buy a lottery ticket? Don't buy a lottery ticket. I have never bought a lottery ticket in my life.
Well, and that's why people object to that sometimes, though, because they say, look, that's a very regressive tax, because the people least able to buy the tickets are the ones that are doing it.
I
What do you say?
disagree.
Huh?
I completely disagree. If you look at the national average, when it comes to lottery tickets, it's not like blackjack. It's not like poker, those types of things. It is the middle class to the upper class. And they buy those tickets for entertainment. You have workplaces. They're like, oh, once a month, we're going to send someone from the office, and work is going to buy the lottery ticket. It's a $5 ticket or whatever the price is, right? Depending on, Powerball, jackpot, whatever. And they'll all pool in, put in, go buy 10 tickets, bring them back, and they'll split the money, right? It's literally an entertainment piece. You don't get the same adrenaline rush or dopamine hit from lottery like you do with other casinos, slot machines, those types of things.
Now, a lot of states that have that use that money for education. Is that?
They do. They use it for education. And if you ask a lot of the lawmakers in those states, they kind of wish that they hadn't, and now they're too far down that road that they can't change it. Well, what I feel like this would do is we could lower property tax, which would give the local districts a little bit of leeway. And you know what, the property taxes have been risen so much in the last, 400% in parts of my district. Property tax were raised 400%.
I know people are
"I
concerned
can't."
about property tax.
And the districts are like, well, we really got to be careful about how we do this. But if we could remove some of those burdens in other areas when it comes to property taxes, the districts would have a little bit more flexibility when they truly do need to raise their taxes. It wouldn't be such a huge hit for the people. I think of my mother-in-law who built her home 30 plus years ago, and her property tax bill today costs more than her mortgage ever did. And that's the story all around our state. People are being literally taxed out of their home, paying more in property taxes than they ever paid the last 30 to 40 years in a mortgage. And for what? They're not using the state the same way that a family like I am using it, with all of my kids and,
Right.
and traveling every day, and the wear and tear on the state is not coming from those that are, widows in their 60s and 70s, but they're paying the ultimate price right now.
So this money then would be distributed, because a lot of the property tax is county and city taxes, right?
is.
So the proposal is that would be, how would that make it back to the cities and counties?
Well, first we would eliminate completely the state property tax, and we would use the revenue generated from the lottery to compensate for that. But then we could start looking at proportionally.
Because we have taken a lot of the state portion out already.
And we could finish that.
Right.
Finish that off for good. And then we can start looking at allocating that money back to those cities and counties as needed. There's a whole formula that we're working out right now that would make it a fair way for them to receive that.
So what groups are you talking to about
Well-
this? Because I know you're really good about working with people that are concerned about this.
Yeah, I've talked with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints just to let them know how what I'm planning to do, and just to keep them informed. I'm talking with other stakeholders from other states who ran these bills or had this, and figuring out how they did it, what they loved, what they didn't love. Just talking honestly with citizens. So I'm not even meeting with any company.
So it seems like the big group that's going to be opposed to this is the League of Cities and Towns, right?
Right now I don't know that they would be. I don't see the reason for the League of City and Towns to be opposed to it, because it's not going to impact.
So what you're talking about then is any tax that we eliminate locally will be made up somehow with the
revenue from the lottery, correct? Yeah. So right now there's really only a couple groups that I know of that are opposed to it. They believe that any kind of gambling is a tax on the poor. But again, I disagree. I cannot name one tax that is voluntary, but that is exactly what the lottery is. It's 100% voluntary.
Yeah, and that's and that's one of the problems with property taxes is that you can't get out of paying your property tax.
Yeah,
and
you
people
don't have to
say,
pay
well,
it.
people that rent are not paying it. Well, yeah, they are, because
The homeowner is increasing their rent
Right.
every year that their taxes go up. And you don't have to pay your property tax for sure, but you will lose your home.
Yeah.
And I've talked to too many widowers who didn't pay for 3-4 years, and they were about to lose the home that their husband built for them 30-40 years ago, that they rose their kids and are taking care of their grandkids in, but they are overwhelmed by these massive property taxes. And I understand, and I don't want to downplay that there are people who really are concerned that this is a moral issue. We don't want to bring this into our state. But when you're talking to these widows who are literally going to
and so your primary objective with this then is looking for alternative ways
absolutely
of paying property tax.
Absolutely. Make it 100% voluntary. And it's money that we're already spending as Utahns. Over $200 million. We can turn our eyes and say, no, we don't want the lottery because it's not good enough for our state. But when do we ever, as conservatives, want the government to ban behavior? Well, we don't like homeschooling, let's ban it. No. What if someone said, oh, we don't like, people being able to see a holistic doctor? Ban it. It just doesn't fit our narrative, right? Like, we should be able to let people make decisions for themselves and voluntarily participate in programs and things that is right for them. And if the benefit of them doing that is helping the people who can least help themselves when it comes to living on a fixed income and not being able to afford their property taxes, then why not? The money's being spent. Let's have it spent here. And if the money amount increases, okay, so more people are participating in the lottery. But we have to forget that narrative that people are going in and blowing their whole paycheck on a lottery ticket, because that's just not what happens. If you actually read the studies and statistics, nobody goes in and blows a whole paycheck on a lottery ticket like they do at slot machines or poker tables. There's a massive difference between lottery and slot machines. And I grew up in states that had casinos and blackjack tables. I don't think we need those in our state. I wouldn't oppose it if someone else ran the bill, because I believe people should choose for themselves when it comes to these matters. But I'm not running a bill to bring those in. I'm running a bill to bring in the lottery, because we're already doing it. There's already gambling happening, and nobody's seeking the financial reward for it.
Interesting. Well, hopefully on the podcast here, people that have some feedback on this might just write a comment. It'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback we get.
It'll be good.
Yeah, because it's always nice to know how other people feel. So, in closing, we're out of time, but what other things do you want people to know about that you're concerned about?
For me right now, I think the last thing that I'm working on that I'll bring up just briefly is a parent's Bill of Rights as well. We have a lot of parents who send their kids off to school, daycare, whatever, and they're like, where did my rights end because they entered those doors? Hospitals, for example, too. And we've got to make sure that the state of Utah has a clear understanding of what the parents' rights are, and that the parents start taking ownership of those rights. Let's make sure that if a kid, tells their teacher something in school, that it's not being hidden in folders and files for the parents never to find out about. We just need to make sure that not only are kids being safe and protected, because we have things in place. If parents aren't protecting and making their kids safe, we have things in place to deal with that. But we have to give parents the tools they need so that they can do their job, because it is their job to provide for and protect their children.
Yeah, and I hope anything we do along those lines, doesn't really punish teachers, but
right.
but improves that relationship.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it's not just teachers, right? It is doctors. It is childcare facilities. There's all these things that I don't think most people even realize, that once your kid steps into that clinic, well, they get to sign away their own, they can say, I don't want my mom or dad to know anything about this visit. I'm going to pay that bill still.
Yeah.
Because I'm primarily responsible for doing it, but I don't get to know anything about it. How am I supposed to help my child?
Yeah.
And all of that, what we do should be under the realm of wanting to help and provide for and protect children. And if ultimately the parents are responsible for that, then let's put that burden on their shoulders with support and with the law behind them.
Very good. I like that. Kera Birkeland, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week.